Inside Africa, in association with Zenith Bank. Zenith Bank, in your best interest.
Hello, I'm Isha Sesay. Welcome to Inside Africa, your weekly window to the continent. Water is one of the most essential elements on Earth. Without it, human life simply cannot exist. And yet about 1 in 6 people has a hard time getting access to clean water. In this week's show, we'll mark the UN's 15th annual World Water Day with a look at the impact of the problem and what's being done about it. And actress Lucy Liu of Charlie's Angels fame explains what she's doing to help and how others can chip in. Women and children in developing countries spend 200 million hours a day walking to get water. Yes, 200 million hours a day. That figure comes from Water Partners International, a US-based non-profit group. Often the water brought back to the homes is contaminated. Poor access to clean water takes an enormous toll, not only on people's health, but on economies. It is fundamental to human life and taken for granted by millions. But clean water is a scarce resource in many parts of the world. According to UNICEF, more than 1 billion people around the globe lack access to safe water. At least 300 million of those individuals live in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a cruel irony that a continent that appears blessed with abundant rivers and lakes is the second driest in the world after Australia. UNICEF's Water, Environment and Sanitation Chief says Africa is lagging behind the rest of the world when it comes to drinkable water coverage.
Whereas globally we might be looking at coverage rates of above 80% for water supply, in Africa we're looking at coverage rates of less than 50%.
The situation is taking a heavy toll on the continent's people. Women and children suffer disproportionately when clean water is hard to find.
When water points are distant, it is women who suffer because we see overwhelmingly from the evidence that it is women who carry water, women who go to fetch water and bring it back to the house, often spending hours a day doing that, and it's backbreaking work.
The lack of clean water is costing lives. Diarrhea-related diseases are among the biggest killers of children under 5. It's estimated 1.5 million youngsters die of these illnesses every year, and a significant number of those cases are in Africa. All the while, Africa's water problem is exacting a high economic price, one that is undermining the continent's collective efforts for sustainable development.
We know that Africa would find it very difficult to reach its full economic potential unless water and sanitation facilities are available and unless coverage increases.
Some experts believe that water scarcity will ultimately lead to food shortages, which will in turn lay the groundwork for further conflict on the continent. However, UNICEF's Clarissa Brocklehurst points out that some African countries have made enormous progress in the last few years. She says Burkina Faso went from 38% water coverage in 1990 to 61% in 2004, and Malawi went from 40% to 73%. In terms of sanitation, Madagascar went from 14% coverage in 1990 to 61% in 2004. UNICEF says it's working with governments in more than 90 countries on low-cost water and sewer options that empower local communities.
We work with very simple technologies, hand pumps, gravity flow water systems, simple pit latrines, things that we know that people can afford and people can sustain. We're looking to get the maximum impact for the money that we have available to invest.
One of the UN Millennium Development Goals is to reduce by half the number of people without access to safe drinking water and basic sanitation by 2015. But experts say Africa is not on track to meet its targets because of conflict, political instability, limited investment and political will. Ultimately, African leaders and their investment partners must overcome those challenges to make the continent's water woes a thing of the past. Actress Lucy Liu has made it her mission to raise awareness about Africa's water needs. We'll hear from her about her work with UNICEF when Inside Africa returns. And if you've ever played host to guinea worm, you never want to go through that painful ordeal again. We'll look at efforts to eradicate this debilitating parasite.